build an annual giving to estate plan. I am Teresa Witt, and I am going to be glad to share some of my stories today with you. But I don't know too much about community media, so I'm hoping that together we'll learn what each other's fields are all about. I come with about 25 years experience in fundraising, but my story is I truly fell into fundraising. I was hired as an executive assistant to the chief development officer, and before I knew it, I was doing all kinds of development and fundraising opportunities. It matches with my character traits because I enjoy hearing people's stories and telling about my mission. So really all you need to be a great fundraiser is to care about people and to care about your mission. So even though there are some technical processes we can talk about today, it truly is all about relationships and how you treat those relationships. So this is going to be hopefully a fun time. We'll go ahead and get started. Has anybody ever done fundraising in your current positions, or have been a donor, or have worked as a volunteer towards fundraising efforts? Yes? Okay, this is a fairly intimate group, so I'm hoping there's a lot of interaction between the two. So we will move on from there. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Pam Spears. I'm a Chief Development Officer with Cornerstone Montgomery in Rockville, Maryland. I have the privilege of knowing Teresa for, gosh, we met in 2004, I think, and Teresa has always been my go-to person for annual giving. She always puts together a terrific campaign and brings people together, employees, community constituents. She brings them together in a wonderful way, and planned giving is kind of my specialty. So together, that's what gave us this idea to put this presentation on today. I've been fundraising for about 30 years or so, but I stumbled into fundraising too, like a lot of us do. The first half of my career was actually in public relations and freelance writing and marketing. But I did fundraising as a volunteer. So I was a United Way loan executive and learned about fundraising as a volunteer and in that capacity. It taught me a whole lot. And then when we moved to Maryland with my family and I in 1996, I just walked over to Montgomery General Hospital because I live in Olney, and they needed a part-time special events planner. Before I knew it, I became a fundraiser. But I learned as I went along, and there are a lot of wonderful resources that can help you as you grow in this field. So it's a lot of fun. It's challenging. We enjoy it thoroughly, and we've been doing it for a long time together, so we're glad to share our experiences with you, and we hope that you'll share your experiences with us. But I found, for me personally, that the first half of my career working in public relations was a perfect prelude to what I'm doing now, because as Teresa mentioned, a lot of what we do is storytelling and sharing our information and involving people in what it is that we do. So your work with media certainly encompasses that, and you'll see a direct connect with what we do and what you do. So we'll start our presentation here. If you don't mind, I'll take a seat so I can drive this. But I'd like to invite you to start off with a little bit of an exercise. I know you're just coming off of lunch, so this might help us ease into the program here. I can't take any credit for this exercise. This came to me. I was working with a wonderful consultant. Her name is Barbara Sicante. She has written an amazing book, and if I could only have one book in my fundraising library, it would be Barbara Sicante's book. It's Fundraising Basics, and she partnered with Ms. Jacobs to put it together. If I could only have one book in my fundraising library, it would be Barbara's. And I hired Barbara to help me with a board training session one time, and she gave me this idea. So I invite you to give this a try, whether on paper or on your laptop. Let's take a few moments, and then we'll go around the room and we'll talk about our responses here. But for the first few moments, in one sentence, please, I invite you to define the mission and purpose of your organization. Just in one quick sentence.
And if we don't see you exercising your mind, you'll start exercising your body. So
Look at them. Yeah, right. then the next question would be, why have you, and I'm hoping that we all, because we all have to walk the walk as fundraisers, I would never ask people to do something that I have not done myself. So when it comes to nonprofit fundraising, I always make a gift to my own organization, of course. So why have you made a personal commitment to your nonprofit organization or a charity that you care about? Why have you made that commitment? Then the final step would be combining number 1 and number 2. You bring together your mission, what does it mean to you, and that actually is your message. We talk about an elevator speech, being able to share succinctly with people that you're working with why this is important, why people should care, and why now. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. That's in your case for support. But I wonder if I could go around the room, would anybody be willing to share what they have written? Yes, sir.
My first two. We build community spirit through media, and I love bringing the community together. Whenever I explain things to people, I'm like, it just always seems like I'm whatever idea we have, somehow I rope somebody else, some other organization in, and it all kind of benefits and makes everybody happy.
Okay.
I think that's what I get out of it. So I haven't really combined the two yet, but I mean that's how I feel.
Okay, great. And your name, sir?
Brian.
Brian, and what organization are you with?
North Andover Canada.
Pardon me?
North Andover Canada, Massachusetts.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else care to share their thoughts on that? Yes, ma'am. Maybe name?
I'm Sue Pelosi. I'm from Midtown Media in Palo Alto, California.
Wow, you came a long way. Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome to the east side.
So our mission is public access, education, training, and government content.
Okay.
To welcome the community, to give them access to TV, media programming.
Okay.
And I'm personally committed to making things happen and people share their stories.
Oh, very good. Very good. It's hard not to get excited about what we do. I find that genuine energy comes out when you're talking to people and they want to learn more. Great, thank you. Anyone else care to share? Yes, ma'am.
Our mission is to promote democratic ideals and free speech by giving residents the tools and the talents to share their ideas. And this is really important to me because I think that free speech and the ability to share it through community media is one of the cornerstones of, our democracy,
society,
and especially right now, I feel that's especially important.
Exactly. I'm sorry, your name?
Carol.
Carol, hi. And you're local. We met.
Well, Rochester.
Rochester, that's right. You have
Community
local
TV.
family. Right. We met downstairs having coffee. That's great. Thank you. Anyone else care to share their thoughts on this exercise? Yes, sir.
Well, her two parts were, my two parts are in her first.
Okay,
So I'm just going to
okay.
say that we're at Access Sacramento, and we provide cablecast equipment and training resources for Sacramento County in support of free speech, democracy, and the community voice.
Great. And why do you support this?
Well, that's the free speech, democracy, and community voice is sort of
Okay.
the mission of spending dollars for equipment and training resources and cablecasting is it's a task.
Right, exactly. It's the vehicle for accomplishing this mission. Okay, great. Anyone else wish to share? Okay, well, thank you. I encourage you to think about this when you're talking with potential donors. That genuine excitement, that commitment comes through when you're having a conversation like that. Whether it is for something you volunteer for or your organization, you can't fake that. And when you're speaking with a donor, what I always like to do is take it to the next step and say, what inspires you to consider our organization, to be involved with us? And then the conversation develops from there. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. Hank Rosso, who was one of the founders of the fundraising school at Indiana University Center on Philanthropy. It's now the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy in Indianapolis. It's a great school. And they have a lot of classes online if you're ever looking for some more in-depth training in this field in a variety of different subjects. But Hank Rosso said just to step aside and let the mission walk through the door. Just let it walk on through. Because a lot of people, and I know from my personal experience, when I've said to them, oh, I'm a fundraiser, people go, oh, I could never do that. But it really is, it's the mission. And it walks through the door, and you allow it to tell its story. So taking this philosophy forward, what we like to help our organization create, both internally and externally, is what is called a culture of philanthropy. So that everyone feels comfortable with this process, everybody understands that they have a role to play. But there's so many things that enter into a culture of philanthropy. And when we talk about the concepts of fundraising, it's very much like, I'm sure, something that will sound very familiar to you. We have to do research, right? We have to know who our stakeholders are and why they're involved with us. We have to market, we have to tell our organization's story. We have to build those relationships, and we have to be accountable. We have to work in an ethical fashion. So internally, when we talk about a culture of philanthropy internally, we want to have an optimistic attitude. We know that there are a lot of issues out in the world that sometimes it can almost feel crushing, depending on what your organization's mission is. You can feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, but we have to feel optimistic about our future, that our mission is here to accomplish something important and something purposeful and something meaningful, that we all share the same values, that we all buy in to this, right? Because we're all a part of this. We share the responsibility of fundraising. One of my favorite stories, I was working at a hospital a few years ago, and my background is mostly healthcare in one way, shape, or form. I was at my desk one day, and a check for $50,000 just arrived on my desk. Just arrived. And at that moment, I had no idea who this person was or what inspired them to do that. This person wasn't in my database, it wasn't on our radar screen, it was a bequest. But I had the privilege, and I found out later, of course, who this person was and what their motivation was, but I had the privilege of going into one of our managers and directors meetings shortly thereafter and saying, this arrived, and I'd be willing to bet that every single person in this room has had something to do with that gift happening. Whether it was the volunteer that greeted the family as they were coming into the hospital and their family member was about to have some kind of procedure and they were nervous about it. It could be their physician, their therapist, the person that brought them their tray. The way everyone communicated with that person or that person's family inspired that kind of investment. So when I say everyone understands that they have a role to play in this, we all do, no matter what our role is within the organization. We have to know who our donors are, and when we have a member-driven organization or people contribute to us in a certain way or participate, they show us who they are. And we need to have some of the resources to be able to do it. You do need to spend a little to make some. Then, of course, externally to the organization is that our organization is, our ethics, our accountability, we are impeccable. That the public has a consistent and positive perception of what they do, of what we do, that they can trust us, they can put stock in us, that we can clearly articulate our message. And that can be difficult sometimes. I've worked for some scientific organizations, and I know that Teresa and I worked together at a particular organization where for very rare bone marrow failure diseases, and the names of the diseases were this long, and to this day I can't pronounce one of them. But we were able to, bless you, we were able to articulate the concept, bless you, of hope. That was the concept that we articulated, that everyone could understand, that no matter what this disease was, and the fact that there was no cure for it, and it was very, very rare, but everyone could understand the concept of hope, and we could articulate that clearly. So what is the message that you can articulate clearly? Is it an open society? Bless you. Democracy. It is education. It is availability of information. I worked for the American Occupational Therapy Foundation too, and for me, one of the most easily expressed concepts was independence. That everyone could understand the concept of independence. That's what occupational therapists did. So to be able to clearly articulate what it is that you're hoping to accomplish, that everyone in your organization is supporting their mission and vision and values, and that's where that exercise came in, and that the organization is transparent. What does that mean? Can anybody share what transparency would mean in the world of fundraising, perhaps? Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't we be like, so if a person is knowing what's happening, knowing where the funding is going, the purpose of the funding, the
Yes.
person had a question about how the funds are being utilized, it's an open kind of window of what you can see.
Exactly so. Thank you. That's absolutely true. To honor the intent of our donor and to show them that we are accomplishing what it is that we promised them that we would do, to close the loop. Thank you very much for sharing that. So again, I love to always talk about sharing those stories. My favorite question when I'm chatting with a donor and getting to know them, again, is what inspires you about our organization? What inspires you to make a gift? What inspires you to volunteer? What inspires you to advocate for us out in the community? What inspires you to be invested in what we do? That, in a nutshell, is creating a culture of philanthropy.
And that can also be an internal exercise with your own colleagues or members of because you all have to understand the importance of what fundraising can do for your organization.
Exactly so. Thank you. So taking all of that in, yes, ma'am. Use the microphone? Sure. Okay.
Maybe we can use it.
I'm so sorry. There we are. How's that?
Here, I'll hold it so you can.
Oh, that's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I got it. Better?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I come from a big family, so
Yes.
you're a small family.
All right. So bringing all that together then, who are our donors? So this is what Hank Rosso called the concentric circles, the constituency theory of donors. And who are these folks? Well, we start from the inside out. We talk about our board members, our major donors, our management staff, our leadership, right? Because they all have to be a part of it too. A lot of organizations make the mistake of saying, oh, I've hired a development person, now I don't have to worry about fundraising. Well, that's not true. Everyone has to be involved with it, and all of the leadership needs to be making gifts too. To be able to say, our organization, our leaders believe so much in what we're doing in our organization that we can say with a full heart, all of our leaders have made a gift. It doesn't matter how much, but as long as they have all participated in some way, shape, or form, have all of your board members made a gift. That speaks volume if you're going out for grants, if you're looking for corporate partnerships, to be able to say out in the community to individual donors that we believe so strongly in what we're doing, that we have made a gift and our own leaders have made a gift, speaks volumes.
In the workshop this morning, they said that some of the bigger companies require
Yes.
that it's full volume.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely, and grantors will do the same.
Many funders will specifically ask you the exact question, how much of your board is engaged with them? Yeah. 100% is the number you strive for.
Exactly, exactly. So as we go farther out into the circle, we see major donors, volunteers, employees, clients. Farther out, we have former participants. You know, that's an opportunity there to find out they were involved with us. Now perhaps they're not. There's an opportunity to engage in some kind of conversation or interaction. Why did they step away from us, and what can we do to invite them to come back? And then people with similar interests, so the greater universe of people. I always like to think, this is going from the center outward, I always like to think that fundraising actually is top down and inside out. That all of our leaders, again, have to support us, and then we go inside out. So top down, inside out, that's how I describe fundraising. That everyone, again, understands that they have a role to play, that the organization is, without question, committed to its mission and values, And then we have a case for support. Did you talk about that in your previous session? Case for support? Anybody mention that? Well, for me, a case support boils down to why should I care and why now? Why should I care about this organization and why should I care now? And if you can articulate that to your constituency, then you will have a greater chance of success in fundraising. So as we try and fundraise in a culture of philanthropy, we talk about, of course, that again, everyone has a role to play, that our activities are centered on building those relationships and customizing those that outreach to the donors. We know that one size doesn't fit all, right? Not everyone wants to watch every program on with your organization. So you customize it to your market. So you're customizing your message to your potential donors. When we worked with a hospital, for example, we worked in a hospital system. And my hospital that I worked with was a rehab hospital. Teresa was with an acute care hospital. So I wouldn't necessarily send out a piece of mail that talked about cardiac care because we didn't have cardiac care. Her hospital did. Your messages can't be one size fits all. That we are able to match the donor needs to the organizational needs, and that's something to be aware of. Sometimes a donor will come to you with a great idea, they think, which may not fit your mission, or there may be some restrictions attached to what they are hoping to accomplish. So you really have to think long and hard about how to engage that donor. Is it appropriate? Not every gift is appropriate. But there's a principle that we go by to help us discern who these folks are. It's called LAI. LAI means linkage. That's the contact, the bridge to the donor. Their ability, A, the perception of their ability to make a gift, and their interest. What is the potential, what does the potential know and understand about your organization? LAI. So if we can help decipher how to fill in that puzzle, that will help us understand who we are reaching out to and who we might invite to participate. Why is accountability important? We talked about transparency, right? What do you think would make an organization vulnerable if we are not accountable? What would that signal, what caution would that signal to a donor?
You're not organized.
Yes?
You're not in control of the funding and stuff.
Right, right.
Do you know of any organizations that's struggling with that?
City of Palo Alto.
Huh? The city of,
Yeah?
your city?
Yeah.
United Way just took a big hit a couple of years ago when some of the administrative fees got out into the media, and they told you they lost lots of dollars that way because they weren't transparent in showing what their administrative fees right up front were, and then once the communities and employees found that out, they immediately had to do some damage control.
Right. Right.
The common fund too, right?
Yes, exactly.
The common fund's a
Yep.
great example of that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
So, and that's back with transparency. If they, again, if United Way had shared those administrative fees up front, they may not have had so much damage control. So it really can be a vicious circle.
Yeah. So the organization can be quite vulnerable then if we do not communicate with our key constituents about changes that are happening with our organization, a new direction, a new strategic direction or program. If we are not transparent and communicate openly with those constituents, that could make us vulnerable, less accountable. If we do not invite people inside our organization to learn about who we are. So if we, for example, I know a lot of organizations have an annual meeting where they invite donors and key stakeholders to come and they present to them what's the future of this organization, what are our plans, where do we want to be, what's our line of sight, where do we plan to go. So by inviting people in and accepting their comments and saying, we want to hear from you, because we could be thinking that we're going in this wonderful direction, right, with a program or a resource, and it isn't actually meeting the needs of our constituency. So that helps create that open conversation. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more as we touch on marketing. And then again, if we don't accurately report what's going on. So what are some of the ways that we can accurately report what our organization is doing? Any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Annual report, a
Yes.
regular newsletter.
Excellent, excellent. What about GuideStar,
Right.
Charity Navigator, right? Those publishing on your website your public version of your 990. Having those documents available for anyone to see are critical for people. Our donors are very savvy now. They do their research.
And the media too, you guys are doing a good job. You just think about Starbucks, for instance. What kind of, opportunities did they share after the incident that they had of taking control of that and trying to change their environment? So again, that was a big opportunity, but you had to see the damage control, the transparency on, okay, there's an issue and this is how we're going to change it, and they wanted to make sure everybody was involved in that change.
Exactly. Thank you. So to do all of this ultimately, it's to illustrate to the public that we are being good stewards of their investment in it, whatever that investment may be, whether it's their time, whether it is their time, talent, or treasure, as we like to say, that we are being good stewards of all of those gifts that they have given to us in one way, shape, or form, and that their investment is making a difference. So our donors then want to know that we are honoring their intent, that if we say that we are raising money for X, then we are doing X, and we can report back to them that we have accomplished this, and your gift has helped to make that possible. That's always been one of my favorite things in the world to do, is when I'm visiting with a donor, I know you love to do this too, is to say, I just want to say thank you. Your gift helped us accomplish this. We could not have done this without you. Let me show you what you helped us do. That kind of honoring of their intent. I know that you gave us this to create this. Well, we've done it now. Would you like to see it? Would you like to learn more about it? There are volunteers, there are stakeholders. They want to know that their time is being used wisely. Have you ever been involved in a volunteer organization where you go, I'm not so sure about this, and you step away? Anyone had that experience? I'm sure we all have at one time or another. And of course, our stakeholders want to know that our leaders are upholding all of these things as well. So when it comes to stewardship and ethics and accountability, we're saying that we are, as an organization, fulfilling a personal need. That we are honoring the intent of all of our constituents, and we are being good stewards. Right there in a nutshell. We'll be talking a little bit more about protecting donor rights, and there is a donor bill of rights that you can actually download and even place on your website if you wish. And we are protecting donor privacy. How important is that? Yeah, very. Let's say you have a donor that says, I want my gift to be anonymous. That has to be respected. In your annual report, for example, you may see a list of donors, and you'll have anonymous, maybe with a number next to it to show how many donors within your constituency say they don't want their name known. We have to respect that. If a donor says, please take me off of your mail list, we have to do that too. That's
Begrudging.
right, you know. If they say, I no longer want to receive your newsletter, we have to respect all of those things. So whatever agreement we have entered into them. If we have entered into an agreement with a donor for sponsorship of some kind, and we promise them that they are going to be recognized in a certain way, we have to deliver that. We have to close the loop and follow through and honor all of the commitments that we've made to them. Here are some of the documents that we were talking about. The Donor Bill of Rights, and there is, of course, an AFP Code of Ethical Principles and Standards. And if you look on the Association for Fundraising Professionals websites, you'll be able to find this. But it says very clearly the ethical standards that we must follow as fundraisers. For example, I'm sure you've encountered this before too, that some people say, well, you know, could we pay you a percentage of the dollars that you raise? You know, would you be willing to work with us if we paid you a percentage of what we raise? Well, no. Ethically, we could not do that. There cannot be any suggestion that we are influencing a donor's decision in any way by personal gain. So we sign a code of ethics every year as members of AFP, and through our CFRE, we are Certified Fundraising Executives, to say we are upholding these standards, these ethics. So you may want to consider publishing on your website the Donor Bill of Rights. You can download it. It's been endorsed by all the professional fundraising associations, and it clearly maps out our commitment to our donors.
And you have to make sure you can adhere to those Bill of Rights. So read it, make sure your leadership agrees with it, and then make sure you publish it.
Exactly, exactly. So then everything the fundraiser does, we have to do this strategically, right? There are times when folks have said, oh, you're a fundraiser, you plan parties. We do, but that's not all. There is a method to our madness, and everything flows from thinking strategically. Because why? Why do we have to think strategically? That there's a lot of competition for dollars out there, right? That our donors are really savvy, and there are a lot of choices where they can make their contributions, where they can direct their gifts. And we need to show that we are providing good to the public, that we are being good stewards. So knowing that everything that we are trying to accomplish is flowing from the organizational strategic plan into a development plan, through a marketing plan, so we're talking about what it is that we're doing out into the community, and then we're showing people out in the community what it is that we're doing. It is a discipline process that takes all year long, and it has to be nimble too. All right, it is about 1:05 right now. Would anyone like to take a break? I know we have a rather long session. Everyone okay? Want to check in? Okay. Well, we'll go until about 1:20, and then we'll take about a 10-minute break. Okay? Great. All right. So moving on to some subjects that I think you probably are more familiar with. How does marketing and public relations enter into fundraising, right? Well, for me, it's people will not support an organization they know nothing about. We have to help share the story and invite people to participate. So marketing, as we know, is finding out what people need or want and telling them what's available, providing it. In fundraising, we're sharing what we've accomplished and what their donations have helped us accomplish, that we're solving a problem, that we're helping to solve a person's pain. We're also answering the question, what's in it for me? Why is this important to me? Why should I support? We're targeting our message, right? Because not every message is appropriate for every audience. And this gives us a chance to get to know our audience well. We're talking about our position, too. Where do we fit in the market? What makes us stand out, or what makes us unique? We define, in the audience's terms, how we connect with them. And there's a term I learned recently called brand raising. Anyone heard that? I thought it was really kind of cool. It's what is our image in the market, and how are we growing that? So what are the core elements of our organization? What is our identity? How do we visualize our message? And how do people experience us? That's all part of our brand, how we're communicating out to the public. So let me toss out a couple of examples to you. We talked about Starbucks and United Way. I'm going to give my age away here, I'm afraid. Anyone familiar with the Johnson & Johnson Tylenol issue? I was in college when that happened. What did that situation tell you about Johnson & Johnson?
I'm sort of drawing a blank on what the final outcome was, but you know, they had a lot of problems, and they really worked hard through PR to try to solve the image issues.
Right. And even more, you know, beyond the public relations part of it, they did something, right? They, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but there was a problem with some tampering with Tylenol, and people suffered from that. So the company took a hard look at it, and they looked at their packaging, and they redid their packaging to help answer that issue. But they also communicated it very well out to the community that, yes, we own this issue. We recognize that it's a problem. This is what we've done to correct it, so you can feel confident. So how did that, for me personally, that raised the brand in my mind of the organization. Now let me toss out another one to you. How about Exxon? Anyone remember the Valdez? How did that impact your impression of the brand? Anyone care to share?
Negative.
Pardon?
Negative.
Yeah.
Did they do a good job in trying to rebuild your confidence?
Over long term, no.
Yeah.
Correct.
So that hit on that brand has stayed with you. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you around the corner there. I apologize. Hi. I'm so short. Sorry about that. So think about that too. You know, as we're messaging, how are we raising our brand? How are we talking about what we're doing? How are we owning up to our issues and sharing what we're doing to meet a need, to solve pain out in the community?
And then that message, do I need this?
Yeah, sure.
And that message needs then to go to the community. I worked for a healthcare institution who had, unfortunately, an incident that we were on the verge of losing our accreditation, which in the healthcare world, to lose your accreditation, you lose your insurance carriers, you lose your patients, you learn all those accreditations you need to run a business. So when that story hit the media, we had some major damage control. So our public relations and marketing people were very concerned in making sure that message and all that got relayed. But I, as a development officer, was out meeting our stakeholders, and I had to have that same story or that same message because they were just as angry because they had invested in an institution that was not living to the par that they of expectation. So again, talking back to the very beginning side, it has to be a full culture. Everyone has to understand that the development officer also has to be equipped with whatever that message of your organization is, because it needs to be united front, for lack of a better reason. And they did live through that, and still today, and that's been several years, 20 years now, there still comes up that question, what happened to your accreditation? So you have to do a good job, not only short term, but long term.
Exactly, thank you. So knowing then that all through this, communication is another subset of this. And as communicators yourself, working with organizations that at its very core is communication, that it gives us a chance to increase the visibility of our brand, to gain recognition, to increase our standing, to recruit volunteers, right? After some kind of push out in your community, do you have people that come forward and say, I'm really interested in what you're doing, I would like to participate? So it helps recruit volunteers and members or donors. It helps to organize a community and perhaps influence, not control. We can't control behavior, but we can help to influence it. But also understanding that communication is a two-way street. Now, marketing is more out, but communication is two-way. And when we get a question or a concern, I always look at that as a gift, particularly with social media. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later. I always look at it as a gift. If a donor or constituent cares enough to say, I have this concern, or I'm unhappy, or I'm confused, I consider that a gift. It gives you a chance to engage in that conversation, to clarify an issue, to clear up a problem. So I look at it as something not to be afraid of, particularly with social media. There are some organizations that say, oh, we shouldn't have a Facebook page because, people could comment and they could say something negative. Well, you do need to have some practices and some policies in place to know how to respond. But I look at it as a gift. If a donor is kind enough to say, I'm upset about this, then that gives me a chance to find out why. and what is causing that, and maybe help clarify that misperception. So ultimately then, everything begins with the mission and the vision. As development professionals, Teresa and I have said that you need to have a thorough understanding of what your organization does, have a goal, a plan for achieving it, and be able to clearly demonstrate its impact. Which brings us to our development plan. Now this is a rather deep kind of discussion, so why don't we take a little break right now, come back in 10 minutes, and we will talk a little bit more about development plan, and then we'll give you some real-life examples.
I think it's the nuts and bolts. That
Yeah.
was sort of the vision of what you need to have in strategies beforehand, but now we'll get into the plan and how we're going to raise money.
So it is now 1:14. If you'll come back in 10 minutes, we will resume. Thank you.
See ya.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I used to teach a yoga class, and I used to say to folks, I'm really grateful that you've come. I'm really, really grateful that you've come back. So thank you so much for coming back from the break. We'll continue. All right. So all of this that we discussed earlier in this session leads us to creating a development plan. Otherwise, it's easy to chase after shiny things, you know. you need to have a plan. I once volunteered for an organization. They wanted me on their development committee. And I said, great, you know, let's take a look at your development plan. It's like, oh, we don't have time to make a plan. And I ran for the door because I could see that I was going to be spinning with one foot tacked to the floor. The plan, I guess the common phrase is plan your work and work your plan. It's so vitally important because there's so many good things that we could be doing, and our volunteers can be very well intentioned, but perhaps lead us off in a direction that isn't helpful to ultimately where we need to be to meet our strategic goals for the organization. So it's imperative for us to create a plan. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't be nimble, that we can't respond to opportunities that present itself, and I'll show you an example of that later on, where an organization was able to seize upon something that just happened and made something wonderful about it. But it still fell within the organizational mission. It still supported strategically where the organization wanted to go. So there was that ability to be nimble and to be responsive, but it did still follow the where you want to be. So as we are creating this development plan, we have to talk about the fact that there are critical issues in managing the program, right? The plan helps us do that. That there are more demands for services and fewer resources, as we all know we have to manage. That the environment is constantly changing. This is why we need a good plan to help us. We're balancing the needs of today with the needs for the future, and that's where plan giving can come in. We're showing our accountability to the board, right? Because if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. We're defining the roles of our leaders, who's doing what and who's helping us and how will we help them do what they need to do. We're keeping pace with technology and information. So do we need to add something to our fundraising mix that we don't have previously that will help us grow in a way that's strategic? And it helps us motivate and energize our staff and volunteers, right? Everybody knows where the prize is, where we're trying to work toward. So this all impacts on where we're going and why it is so important to develop a plan that encompasses all of these things, our goals, how we're going to reach those goals, how we're going to determine whether or not we've been successful. Is it within a reasonable time frame? A campaign needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? There's always the annual campaign, but it has to have a flow, a season to it, so people can feel like they're reaching a goal and they're celebrating it. Who is responsible for what? How are we going to talk about it? And what budget do we have available to us? If we don't have much of a budget, for example, then maybe we can't do a full-fledged direct mail campaign, but maybe we can do a little bit more on social media. So do we have the budget? Do we have the bandwidth and the resources to do what it is that we need to do? So now you've listened to me talk long enough. So I'm going to turn this over to Teresa to talk about an integrated program and her experience with annual giving, because she is my go-to person for annual giving.
Okay, we can sit here and talk about plans and the importance, and I totally agree that they are, because that plan can not only be your guidance, but it can also be your reference when someone comes up with a shiny new idea, and you can sort of talk about how it reads within your plan. But basically, there's really 3 ways to raise money. Bottom line, it's either face-to-face, it's either through a direct mail or a media, or through an event. So it's mail, phone, face-to-face, and that's it. So when you start talking about those simplicities, it's easy to sort of talk about how do we get those sort of 3 areas into an integrated development plan. Because you need all 3, because not everybody's going to respond. Yes, ma'am. It is face-to-face, mail, or phone. In events, it can either be face-to-face or mail. Yeah.
What does social media fit in there?
Well, I think that sort of wraps around your mail, your mail, social media, where there's not a direct contact and not a direct conversation. But you can also talk about many different vehicles, because everybody gives in a different fashion. Some people, like I know my mother, she is a great direct mail person, and she gets a direct mail probably every 2 days from her 3 favorite causes, because they know she's a direct mail responder. So I'm sure she's on the top of the list for their direct mail pieces. But not everybody is a direct mail. You may get some people in an event, whether that's a golf tournament event or whether that's a cultivation education. I'm sure you guys have lots of events within your careers that you can get involved, or within your organizations that can either be a type of a fundraising. Your events are either fundraisers or cultivation and awareness events. Okay, and then another vehicle is an outright campaign. We talk a lot about an annual campaign is usually something that's going to happen to help you with operations. It happens within a 12-month period, and that's the integrated plan. Is how is this thing going to go for the next 12 months? Then there's opportunities where you have special capital campaigns. The organization I work for now is a school that serves children with special needs, either intellectual or learning disabilities. So we are in the midst of upgrading our 34-year-old building. So we are hosting a capital campaign for a particular raise the roof. I can't do that without raising my hands. Raise the roof. So that's a particular need that has a beginning, it has a direct budget, a direct goal, and will have an ending. And hopefully that ending then will show the new roof happening. So as we determine what our integrated plan is and what our fundraising vehicles are, again, it sort of has to follow up with our operation. Pam mentioned a little bit about direct mail. There are organizations out there that you can buy your direct mail service so that you can buy lists, you can buy writers, you can buy da-da-da-da-da. But that then takes your budget to make that happen. So that's where, as a development officer or someone in charge of the development plan, figures out what can we do internally, what resources, social media might we be able to use so that we don't have to involve a budget with. I have to remember one of the first times I worked for a healthcare institution, we had 2,000 employees, and my director came to me and said, "We need new hospital beds." And I was like, who is going to want to give for a hospital bed? I was like, there's no way we'll be able to raise money for a hospital bed. So the more and more research I got, and they said, well, that's the need. We really need new hospital beds. So the more and more research I got into it, I come to figure out, what does a hospital bed do? Well, everyone deserves a good night's sleep. So we came up with that tagline, and we then wrapped around all the needs for a good night's sleep. And then that went across the board. It didn't matter whether you was a mother laboring and needed a good bed to rest their weary heads, or whether you were a cardiac patient, just getting over a heart attack, needed a good bed to rest their head. So we really took that very boring need and came up with the reason for why we needed new beds. And then we turned into a little bit of fun so that we could have a good time with it. Our employee committee wore pajamas the week of the drive because everybody deserved a good night's sleep. We gave night shirts away for those who made a certain level of giving. So we really made it, our team turned it into a fun, having the clear goal, our clear objectives, how can we make this very boring campaign into something that people could be attracted to. And the whole good night's sleep, it went over really well because everyone could identify with what was a good night's sleep. Okay? Yeah, we'll go to the next. Okay. So when we talk about all the different vehicles, we then talk about who are that is. How do you take the person that may just respond from a direct mail campaign and move them up to the ladder so that they can become a longer term investor and a longer term maybe even giving. So this here is the pyramid of giving. And usually if you think about it, it's really sort of that first time giver is a broad swipe. You try to collect them in many different ways, whether it's direct mail, telephone, special events, and they don't really know a lot about you. It's almost like a big awareness. You throw out your fishing net and see what kind of fish you can bring in. But once you bring that donor in, then becomes the importance of how do you pull them up the pyramid ladder. How are you telling them what their gift did? How are you thanking them? How are you gathering more information so you become personalized with them, customize their giving, and make them a repeat donor? And then how do you get them to move up the ladder? Let's say, I have to say one of our biggest estate plan gifts came through, their first time gift was a $25 gift through direct mail. And then once they identified themselves as a donor, we then did more research, we got them more. And that gift ultimately took time, but they left a rather substantial bequest to us. So it's really doing the whole pyramid of giving. Do you guys have fundraising in your organizations now, or is this brand, who has fundraising and who's brand new to the idea? Brand new? How? So do you do any type of fundraising yet at all?
We do direct mail beginning of the year, and I thought it was the first time for the organization was about 8 years old. We brought in almost as much as we spent, but I thought at least was some awareness. And we are very seasonal community, so I'm not sure how many people were actually home when we sent it out. But my board was very happy, but I actually thought it was the first time out it was hard.
To break even? Did you acquire new donors? Yeah. Did you acquire new donors to that, or that was just past donor direct mail?
I'm sorry.
Did you acquire new donors with that direct mail?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't have any records of past donors.
Okay.
So our biggest donor was a repeat donor from when I was there. But I think most of the others were around $25 were new as far as.
That's a critical part of your program. That's called acquisition. So that helps build the bottom of your pyramid. So, and we'll be talking about, there's a slide later that shows you the cost per dollar raised. So acquisition is very expensive. You're not going to make a lot of money with acquisition. However, you are going to build the bottom of your donor pyramid. So then you can start the process of get the gift, repeat the gift, increase the gift, which is the mantra. Get the gift, repeat the gift, increase the gift. So yes, your board may have said, oh, this direct mail piece didn't produce what we thought it would be doing, but actually you accomplished quite a bit with it. You got your message out, you touched people individually, and you never quite know what might inspire someone at any given moment to send that envelope back. I know that we've both had this experience where suddenly an envelope appears from like 3 campaigns ago, and you never quite know what inspired that person at that moment in time to write that check, but something did. Whether it was a message that was sent out, or an event they participated in, or some need that triggered something in their mind. But the fact that, and I had a campaign like that too, actually, my very first direct mail campaign, that we did not make really any money at all. But we informed the community about this particular project, and then when we went back to them again, there was a greater awareness and a greater chance of giving. So I would look at that as a success, particularly for a brand new program, that you are building your donor base. There you go. You are welcome.
Look at AFP.net. They'll give you all the statistics on direct mail and acquisition mail. Right. How about others? So I guess, yes, sir.
We do two things. We have a gala event
Great.
that is really kind of only in its second year. We had always given a Leadership in Community Voice award, which is part of a membership meeting, which we've now turned into a gala event.
Oh, good.
So it generated $9,000 for us last year. This year we're hoping it will generate about the same. Events are expensive.
They are. They can cost
we're
50.
managing that as well.
Yeah, 50% of what you raise.
We've also participated in what's called the Big Day of Giving, which is kind of an online giving day for nonprofits in our area. And that, in the last 4 years, has consistently given $1,500 from about 25 donors who give a little bit. And it doesn't much matter whether we promote it big on our channel, we promote it on our radio station. It doesn't matter what we do in social media. We get $1,500 from that.
Yeah.
So this year we did almost no promotion of it. We didn't spend a lot of staff time. Still got $1,500. So.
But what does that consistency say to you?
It means we're reaching out to the same people and getting the same result.
But it also says to me, and we'll be touching upon this when we get to planned giving, that these folks are committed to you. That they have made your organization a part of their family. And that they will continue to support you going forward. And that person could be your best planned giving prospect. So the fact that they are consistently supporting you at whatever level, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, is a really good sign. And the fact that you have created this program that now doesn't really require a whole lot of work on your part, so you're not really expending a lot of resources to do it. People kind of look forward to it like your gala, and it becomes part of the fabric of your program. So then you can start to get a little more creative with some of your other resources and build on that. So after your gala, for example, what do you do after the gala?
Besides saying thank you, and certainly following up with the sponsors, we have most of the money comes from sponsors as opposed to from individual ticket sales. Right. It depends on who the award winner is. But this year, the award winner is the shelter manager for an animal shelter.
Oh, great.
That does a program on a channel called Shelter Life. So Petco is donating $5,000 to that particular event.
Terrific.
And State Farm Insurance is donating $5,000. And those are our biggest sponsors ever.
That's wonderful.
That's a smart integrated plan for your fundraiser.
Yeah.
Because that's a smart integrated plan for your fundraiser. Because events are events, they are expensive, they are time consuming, but if you connect the right cause or the right collaborative partner, that can make a biggest difference. So I'll give you an example too. We host, at my current organization, we hosted an annual luncheon. It was a fundraiser. My executive director doesn't want to do a gala because that's just too much and our market is saturated with them. So she's like, we're going to do a luncheon. So we did a luncheon. It was like a ladies' tea. It started out as a ladies' tea. And then this year, I said, we really need to recognize or open our network of who we're asking. So if we do some type of award and recognize a particular member of the community, then that opens up their network or their bullseye, if you want to think about our intricate circle, their bullseye of relationships. So we, same thing, recognized a local partner at CVS Pharmacy who has been huge in our organization. And we got a grant from CVS, and so my executive director was like, wow, this is like a pretty good idea, just by honoring the person that we honored well deserved the award, and it opened a whole new network. So now we'll see what happens this fall luncheon, but I've already approached those those people, trying to get them back as sponsorships. So again, that goes back to strategically thinking. There's nothing worse than a development officer who says, oh, we need money, and the first volunteer says, oh, I've done a bake sale. So it's, well, yeah, I was thinking a little higher than that. So that goes back to really it being a whole process, a whole plan, and really strategically thinking about how are we going to get these funds for our organization to do our mission.
And then how are we going to follow up with those folks to say, would you like to join us in this next step? You helped us achieve this. We'd love to tell you about what our next plan is. Would you like to learn more about it? And see if they can become re-engaged and reinvested and perhaps increase their gift. So we're inviting them. And one of my favorite phrases is, ask for a gift and get advice. Ask for advice and get a gift. That's kind of my mantra. So when I'm working with volunteers, I love to say, I would love your, and I mean this, of course, sincerely, I really admire your commitment to our organization, what inspires you to get involved with us, and what do you think about thus and so? Would you give us your impression or your ideas about this? And then, of course, follow up with them. They have to know that you're sincere about this. But we find that as we involve people, so I was involved, and I have been for years now, with a local program through our Chamber of Commerce that honors women leaders in the community. And we have a practice that whoever received the award becomes a member of the committee for the next year. That's their understanding. And they help advise and grow the program. And they helped, one of the previous recipients helped say, hey, you know what? Let's establish a scholarship from the proceeds of this tea, named specifically for this program. And it has grown since then. So we took her advice, and she said, yeah, we're raising money for scholarships, and that's great, but let's create our own scholarship. Let's create the Athena Scholar from the proceeds of this tea. And now, 10 years, 11 years later, our practice is everyone that has been a recipient remains on the committee. They bring their advice, they bring their guidance, they bring their circle of friends, and this program has continued to grow over the years. I'd love to share with you another example of something that worked quite serendipitously, but again, it showed outreach and marketing as well as touching our community. When I was working at the rehab hospital in the same system as Teresa, the first thing that I learned about when I joined the organization was people said, we need a van, we need a van, we need a van. We had patients that needed to go out to the community to practice activities of daily living. They had various injuries and had to learn how to function out in the community. Now, we had a group of patients that were in electric wheelchairs. So we did not have the vehicle to be able to take them out to the community. We were actually taking patients out by cab so that they could practice. So that was hugely expensive, and it eliminated the fact that anyone with an electric wheelchair could go. So we found out that the local school district had a program through their automotive trades program. They would accept donated vehicles, refurbish them, and then donate them back to charities. And I found out that they had a van with a hydraulic lift. I went, ooh-me. So we did a proposal to them. We got the van, which was awesome. But from beyond that, we invited the students to come to the hospital so they could meet the patients they were helping. And then we took our occupational therapists to the school so they could show the students how to install adaptive equipment. Because who knows, they could be doing that someday in their automotive trades program. So we started this process, and every year for several years after that, so in addition to getting the van, showing them what they did for us, we showed them what we could help them do. We got some wonderful coverage in the local press, and that relationship continued, so that when we went back to the schools and their board of directors, the local car dealers that were helping with that program, they knew who we are and we could go to them. So it all grew from there.
Yeah, so that's basically the pyramid of giving, which we first, with the big open net, cast it out to our seas and try to identify who might be our givers. And then as to try to repeat that gift, we have to give them more information, and we have to find that information. So it's almost a complete circle of giving and getting. And then as we learn more about them, hopefully they move up the ladder and develop certain interests, which usually goes more into your capital giving and getting them involved. And that might be either serving on your boards or being a volunteer or so forth. And then ultimately you hope they reach the pinnacle with a planned gift. So that's our pyramid of giving. There we go. So, roles of annual giving. And like I said, it's basically to cast a net. So that's where we're going to identify our largest numbers of donors, whether it's through events or whether it's through collaborations or whether it's through direct mail. It's trying to cast that net out to get as many as you can. Then really becomes the idea of how to, once you get them into the donor family, how do you keep them? They say right now, to help me with the statistic, that if you get the second gift, then they are committed usually, what's our statistic, do you remember? Something about okay, doesn't matter. Retention, yeah. If you get the second gift, their chances
More
are
than likely.
80% that they'll give you a third. If you don't get that second gift, then you're in trouble. Yes, ma'am.
I have a specific question in
Sure.
regards to how do you go about identifying a potential donor? What is the makeup to make an individual or a company like, you know what, this would be a great fit? So, cause maybe I'm in the phase of recruiting and retention and all of that. How do I even gain a great list of donors that specific? How do you kind of even like target? Is it a way you target key things or initial setup conversations or the follow up? What's that step to step look like? Kind of?
All of the above.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, does your organization have members?
We're trying to set up we post like community bulletin boards. So we have a membership for if you are a nonprofit or a business who wants to get your event out there, like through our station, we post different announcements.
Okay.
We have a fee that's set up for you to have your membership. But I'm trying to get it to where I can have a overall membership, so I have a bulletin board specific membership.
Right. Well, I worked for a nursing association a few years ago, and we had 25,000 members, but only about 2,000 donors at the point. So one of the things that we started to do was in the membership renewal, and we did our research to find out that it was the 90-day renewal that got the highest percentage of response. So we created a little buck slip that stuck into the membership renewal form to say, hey, did you know that we have a nonprofit arm to our nursing association? Here's how you can make a gift. And just getting the word out within that membership renewal form helped to build a donor base. Folks that had never given before and didn't even know that our organization accepted a charitable gift started to give. But you have folks that have attended an event, people that have commented on Facebook, folks that have participated in something that you've done. They have self-identified that they have an interest in your organization, but you can also do your research. So when I'm looking at a corporate sponsor, for example, oftentimes on their websites they will say, our mission is this, as a for-profit organization. We have a commitment to the community in this way, and we will support organizations that support these kinds of missions. So they may even tell you, right, that we would be willing to accept a proposal from you because your mission matches ours.
I think you have to even go back to the nuts and bolts of that. You have to declare a database, or you have to be able to store and track this information somehow. So that's probably, I think, the first level of commitment is, do you have an Excel spreadsheet, a constant contact, some type of form to capture information about donors? Because you're gonna need that to continue up the donor pyramid. I know in my case, I do several things. I currently work for a school for children with special needs. So I actually will look into 60% of our students have the diagnosis of autism. So I actually go to other autism sites to see who's supporting them. How are they supporting them? Is there a local agency that I may also know that supports them? So it's not so much stealing donors, but it's capturing information with the same interest. So,
Yeah. And you can buy lists.
Yeah.
You can go to a mail house and buy a list.
the zip code.
By a zip code, by people who have typically supported a specific cause. That is expensive, and that comes under your acquisition kind of budget. But it will help you build your donor base. So if you're starting from square one or square zero, you may consider purchasing a list. But if you have members, if you have people that have attended events, if you have people that subscribe to a newsletter, you can start there. They're within your circle already of people who are interested in what you're doing.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Great. So now let's start some storytelling.
Okay. Where are we at? Are we in? Okay. This particular story, I was working for the hospital, and this lovely lady was diagnosed with cancer, and she was actually making a big splash with the nursing. In our cancer care unit. So the nurses came to me and said, "Oh, you have to meet Mrs. Aquilina. She has got such a positive attitude." So I immediately went to the family to sort of see what the hubbub was about, and come to find out she was very positive. She had this overall, she wanted to make a difference. You know, she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, but she wasn't going down with the illness. She was going to fight. So we talked a lot to the family about how to give, how to make her difference. So they gave their very first gift through just a direct mail piece, because at the hospital we have a huge pool. Anybody that comes in to get services immediately gets a direct mail acquisition. So talk about our fishing pool. It was, we had 150,000 people that came through our doors a year. So they automatically got a direct mail piece. So we sent her out a direct mail piece. She came back with a very small gift. And then we identified them as a person who could make a difference in the community. We knew that they were at an affluent area code. We knew that they were receiving regular services. We knew that they were happy with their services. So we went to have a one-on-one visit. And she point blank asked, she says, "I see the nurses don't have this." And it was a particular project. She says, "I want to make their lives easier. I want to do something about that." So we worked up the program. She ended up giving us like $1,500, and they basically had coffee for the unit. I mean, it's like she wanted to make a difference. So we went back to them. We had nurses write hand notes about how much this coffee made a difference at 2 o'clock in the morning. So then after they did the coffee thing, unfortunately, Mrs. Aquilina lost her battle. And we went back to the family, was there through the whole service and so forth, went back to the family, and he's like, "I want to make a difference in her memory, in her honor." So they were the major gifts for our Aquilina Cancer Center. They gave us one of the largest gifts of the hospital through basically her insurance plan that the family didn't accept. They gave the insurance plan to us. But they gave us $1.5 million to name the cancer center. And that really all started through a whole plan of actions through the giving of just, so this is actually Healing Garden. They're actually in the lobby of the new cancer center there, and what a difference that made. So again, it's talking about taking that wide net. They got a direct mail piece, figuring out what their interests are, figuring out who they are, figuring out how, and then taking that donor database and moving them up the ladder. And then it was basically through her estate plan that they named the Aquilina Cancer Center. So,
But from that,
right. This is our healing garden at the Cancer Center. It was an idea of one of our executives. We had basically had added a floor to the hospital, and it was going to be this blank rooftop that you could see. So we wanted to add green space and make a healing garden. And this was a $13 million campaign to actually refurbish the roof and turn it into a living green space. So our executive powers came and said, okay, we want this healing garden. What are you going to do about it? We're going to need development to raise this portion of it. So we started the whole capital campaign, looking at the donor pyramid, figuring out who might be interested. We did a portion of an employee giving because we really thought that our employees were going to be the ones that benefits the most from this healing garden, because they were going to be able to have lunch out there, take our patients out there, and so forth. So we started the employee campaign with the healing garden. Everything, we decided that for the employees, we were going to allow them to name like a rock, be a part of it, and actually leave rocks with their names on it. So I remember for our employee campaign, it was a week's drive. We raised $500,000 through our employee campaign over a 5-year period. But I carried these rocks around in my backpack. I needed physical therapy when we were done. Carried these rocks around a backpack, and we used the whole story about taking rocks from an ugly rooftop building and making it into this beautiful garden. It was one of the most successful campaigns through our employees. Like I said, we raised $500,000, and we, to this day, all the paths around the central circle there is employees' names. That was the pieces of the rock that they were able to name.
And I had the privilege of being at the dedication for that garden, and the Aquilinos were there to help. And they played a great role in this garden as well. So in addition to the Cancer Center, if I'm correct, they also supported the garden. So that was another aspect of their investment. And they got to interact with employees and to see that the employees supported what they were doing just as strongly, and it meant just as much to them. So they have remained part of the hospital family in such a significant way that they were honored at this event as well, and helped achieve this goal in addition to the Cancer Center. It's truly an inspiring story. Here's another view of it.
Oh, yeah, so this is, the healing garden. The Cancer Center is where we're looking from. So it was a nice correlation to ask them to be a part of the healing garden, because both was going to utilize this garden.
So, sir, as you mentioned, getting back in touch with your honorees, that's the type of thing we talk about, is keeping people invested and involved. So if you have a donor that has made a real difference in a program that you're doing, invite them back. One of the great joy that I had, I was working with a gentleman who helped build another floor on the hospital that I was working at the time, and we invited him to lay the first brick. And we took lots of pictures of him laying with a hard hat, laying the first brick. And it meant the world to him. And sadly, he passed away before we were able to open the new floor. But we invited his whole family to come and unveil his portrait. So when his estate was distributed, there was no question that this was his intention, that we had involved the whole family. They took a great role, a great part in planning the opening and planning all the celebrations. He was a part of the event from the building from beginning to the end of his life, and we kept him involved, and then his family remained involved with us.
Okay. So most annual campaigns, I thought we would just share a quick checklist of how to do an annual campaign. And of course, the case of support is right at the top of that. You need to know what you're raising dollars for. What is the reason, what is the mission, and what is the purpose of this gift? So that's all the case of support. Coming up with the budget is the next one, because you could do, the sky is the limit on some of this fundraising, from purchasing lists for your direct mail to having a gala at the Ritz-Carlton when you really could have it at the Civic Center. So it's those type of things. And if you let some volunteers drive those purposes, your budget's out of the water, and before you know it, you're thinking, why did I do that? So again, it's coming up with those budget. I know the budget saves me a lot when the shiny new thing comes along. So it's like, wait, that wasn't in our budget to buy 6-foot trophies for the first place winners at our golf classic. So it's things like that. It can help you along the way. The vehicles, again, I'm currently in my role now, the Director of Development, am a one-man shop. So when my board of directors are like, oh, Teresa, let's add another event. So I have to really talk about what our vehicles currently are and what we're able to accomplish. Because I, with my mission, would love to raise as much money as possible, but I am a one-man shop. So you have to really set up your vehicles and have that development plan so that you're able to say, okay, I'm glad to do a new 5K race, but do you realize that's going to do this, this, and this, and then what's going to happen with another funding or another whatever. So that's the different vehicles. Any questions about that? What type of vehicles do you guys use to raise money? I've heard direct mail, I've heard of gala,
Facebook,
social
media.
Social media, that's really becoming a hot topic right now.
We'll be talking a little bit more about that later on.
Yes. I'm behind the 8 ball of that. But anyway, how about anybody else have other type of?
I think we have a letter that goes out from the board chair.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Great.
But, small.
And then do you have a response device for that direct mail piece?
We include an envelope.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then, we have an annual report that is
Excellent.
mailed typically with an envelope, but
Okay.
we're going to start to do something online.
Great. Great. The best practice is to have a donate button on every page of your website. Every page. It has to be the easiest thing for every donor. If you make it more than 2 clicks, you'll lose a donor.
You lost a gift.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. And this is where you really need to work hand in hand, because fundraising and development cannot be an island. Because we might have the greatest event coming up, but unless we have the marketing, the publicity, and all that throughout the rest, you know, what is it, build it and they will come? Honestly, if you don't publicize it, no one's going to come. And just like the gentleman talked about, you know, really picking an awardee that made a huge difference in their giving, I mean, all that strategic moves. And then, of course, especially events, without your volunteers, you wouldn't be able to accomplish. I know we hosted a 5K. Our county changed the new rules. We actually run around our school, which is in a very popular area. The county changed the rules that you had to have a, what do you call that when you stand on the, they had to have a guard or a volunteer every time the sidewalk broke so that they could control traffic. So I ended up having like 32 volunteers when I actually started counting how many times our sidewalk broke, whether into a parking lot or even into a vacant building one time. I didn't have volunteers for all that. Well, I would have never pulled off that 5K race if I didn't have bodies on the ground to help with, we could have been cited. So always learn some of those rules before you get into your vehicles. Okay, so and then also what's really good is to make sure you have some measurements. You can't tell your board of directors if it's successful without some kind of measurements. So there's lots of ways to measure, whether it's acquiring new donors, retaining new donors, doing renewals, whether it's cultivation.
Increasing gifts. So let's say you had a number of donors who have given consistently and suddenly they've started to give more. So what is your percentage of donors who have increased their gift? Or donors that you have recaptured. We call them LIBUNTs and SIBUNTs. That's our code for that. LIBUNT means last year, but unfortunately not this year. And SIBUNT means some years, but unfortunately not this year. So if you're able to recapture some of those people, that's another measurement to say, oh, we've brought them back. So there are lots of things that you can measure to show your board or your leadership that our program is growing, that we're investing our resources, our knowledge, our staff, our time, our treasure, our budget into things that are helping us build this program.
Okay. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about direct mail. And then this actually goes right back to your donor database or some type of way you're tracking. You've got to be able to show your board some of these return on investments. So you can see the list here. Average gift is usually one that I know we just started the Giving Tuesday. How many knows about Giving Tuesday? Okay, it's a Tuesday that immediately follows Thanksgiving, and it's been this huge push. And actually, I think it's growing by leaps and bounds as
It
well.
is, every year.
Yeah, by Giving Tuesday. So we actually just became really involved with them. We made it a part of our annual plan last year and really pushed it with our school. So we started talking about what was the average gift because we had 2 years to compare. We do need to do this a little bit to actually get some good strong numbers. Especially with direct mail, you want to talk about cost per mailing. That's an important number to track. And acquisition, your cost per mailing can be much higher because it costs us more to acquire a new donor. Okay. Any questions about tracking? Do you try to do this within your direct mail pieces?
Or set a benchmark and say, okay, this is going to be our first one, and now we're going to start measuring after that.
Isn't it true, like, at least traditionally for print pieces, the direct mail return would be maybe 2%?
Yes.
That's successful if you
Yeah.
get a 2% response.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah,
It is, but again, you're sharing your message. You never know what's going to inspire that person to give again. It gives you a chance to inform them. So let's say you have something new that your organization is talking about, you can talk about that in your letter. Or you can say, your donations last year helped us accomplish this. Now we're going to do this, will you join us again?
I think, I know this. Some people nodding, so we're going to take a break as soon as we talk about this, because I think before we break into the next step, that would be a little deeper. One thing about tracking direct mail, too, is the first year is the setting a benchmark, but then the second, when you only do get your 2% response, you can talk about how many people came back. Because, again, it says with the statistic, if you get a second gift, their loyalty increases like by 80%. The chances of getting a third is 80% higher than it is to get the first, between the first and the second. So then you start talking about those other rules of measurements. So it's 2:09. I think we need to
Should we take
another
another
break.
5-minute break? And we'll come back. I have a couple of other stories to tell you, and then we'll take you quickly through plan giving, which...
Would you rather, would that work for you?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Okay.
Does that work for everybody? I
It
feel like we need to do jumping jacks or something.
I always get the world's worst presentation time. It's usually like right after lunch. It's like, or I'm the last thing between you and a drink or something like that.
Okay, 5 minutes so we can move around a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you.
Please come back at 2:15. And special events, your costs are going to be too high. And if you rely too much on, say, one donor or a couple of donors, I knew a theater that relied so much on one particular donor, and he was tied to a leader in that theater for a very long time. Well, she left that theater, and then that donor left with her. And many times that they depended upon this particular donor even for payroll. So without diversifying your revenue stream, if something happens to that particular corporation or that particular donor, you could be in for some serious trouble. So for the donor, it does all those great things. For the organization, like I said, it provides long-term solvency. It's very cost-effective. As you can see, we were talking about the cost involved for giving. Now look where planned giving falls. A planned gift can cost really only 25 cents per every dollar raised, so it's really very cost efficient. And I'm going to take you through some ways of giving that don't involve knowledge of estate planning necessarily. You don't have to be an expert in financial management. That can scare a lot of people. For me personally, what I love so much about planned giving is that I see it as a solution to a problem. When I'm talking with a donor, I always love to listen for the but. I love your organization, but I'm saving for college. I don't think I'm going to have enough income to see me through retirement. I have this wonderful house, but I don't have a lot of disposable income. I love your organization, but to me, that's what planned giving helps answer. And over time, if you put some energy into a planned giving program, it can actually provide 50 to 80% of your development program's income. It takes several years to get there, and the issue is that usually sometimes when it starts getting to that level of production, you start seeing bequests come in, that's when you stop promoting it and it drops off again. So it has to be a constant promotion that yes, we do accept planned gifts. Yes, you can remember our organization in your will or estate. Another great thing about planned giving is that it is, like I said, there are options for all ages, all gift sizes, all wealth bands. A lot of people, again, think you have to be elderly and you have to be very rich to be able to make a planned gift, but really that's not true. We've learned, there was a study back in 2009 that a growing number of donors in their 40s are now interested in making a planned gift, and we saw a lot of that happen in 2008. What happened in 2008? The market crash, right. So a lot of people started thinking ahead and started planning about what they could do later on, after they were long after they were able to make a gift. People started to make plans earlier and earlier in their life. Younger donors, age 55 or less, are likely to use a variety of giving vehicles. So they may consider an insurance policy or an IRA beneficiary. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. They may consider a trust of some kind. And the 2000 survey of the National Council of Planned Giving donors said 43% of all bequest donors are under the age of 55. So you don't have to be elderly to do that. I made my first bequest at age 36. I did a bequest in memory of my mother. And it was easy to do. It didn't affect me in any way in my daily life. But I could honor my mother very easily with a gift in my will. And 36% of all bequest donors have annual income of less than $50,000. I've heard bequests referred to as the major gift of the middle class. The folks that would think that I could never make a gift that could make that kind of an impact. Well, maybe they can, if thinking creatively and thinking into the future. We also like to share with our donors that what we build, we have to sustain. And that's what planned giving allows us to do. We can sustain the things that they have supported. Would you like to be able to continue your annual gift long after you're able to write a check? That anyone can do it, and there is no bad time to start. So like we said, who are planned giving donors? It doesn't have to be the most wealthy person. It's the person that likes us best. The person who has given consistently every year for 5, 10 years of any amount. So you have the donor, let's say, that's given you a $25 gift every year for the past 10 years, is a terrific planned giving candidate. They have indicated that you are part of their family. They give to you regularly. They would never think of not giving to you. So don't ignore the person that is giving at a certain level just because you think it might be too low. The average legacy gift is $50,000. And I actually had a boss one time who was concerned. You know, she said, how much time are you spending on planned gifts? You shouldn't be spending so much time on that. Well, I can talk about planned gifts while I'm talking about another kind of gift. And people who give a legacy gift statistically give higher annual gifts. So the average annual gift for a legacy donor is about $110. The best part about this is that 90% of all planned gifts are the simplest gifts that you can give. So if you want to start to think about creating a planned giving program, you have to really start talking about it. Pick the right kind of gifts for your organization. So let's say you're just starting out, you're just creating a brand new program. You may not want to be involved in a gift annuity program, which requires all kinds of state approvals and management and tax documentation. You may just want to talk about the fact that you can say, yes, you can remember us with a gift in your will, and have the language available on your website. Talk about it. if you're doing a campaign. Oftentimes people will say, I would love to give more, but I can't. Well, maybe the suggestion to that individual could be, would you like to make an annual gift as part of this campaign, match it with a gift in your will? Or consider that person as part of a capital campaign. I went to a seminar one time about planned giving and capital campaigns, and it was suggested that you might consider front-loading your capital campaign with bequests. If it's going to be a 5-year campaign, the likelihood is that those bequests are going to start maturing shortly after that campaign. And you can recognize that person while they're alive as part of the capital campaign. You can't count the dollar amount, but you can count the intentions, which is a great way of recognizing people. Find your prospects. I like to call them enduring friends, and we'll invite them to special events. We'll honor them in our annual report. We'll say, these are the folks who have given to us, who have been friends for us for 10 years or more, and we'll recognize them in a special place in our annual report. We'll invite them to our annual brunch for our legacy donors so they get to sit with them and talk with them about a planned gift that maybe they hadn't considered that, oh yeah, it's easy enough for me to do, I can do that too. Weave planned giving into all of your conversations. Listen respectfully, and my questions to the donors are, what is your vision for the future of our organization? What would you like to see us accomplish? Where do you see yourself being a part of this organization? What would you like to see done? But planned gifts don't just happen. You have to talk about them. The other ways that we can help determine who our planned giving prospects are, I have not done one, but I know a friend who has done one, a survey, a member survey. And on that survey, they just had one question. This was for the Ocean Conservancy, and they did this one survey, and they had more bequest discoveries than they knew what to do with. They actually hit their goal within the first month after the survey rather than the whole year. But there was just one question on the survey that said, have you considered making a gift in your will to the Oceans Conservancy? And when people checked yes, they had that opportunity to follow up with them and start the conversation. So if you're doing a member survey, for example, include one question that invites people to declare that they are considering this. Look at your data, see the people who are giving consistently. When you're doing your annual appeal letter on your remit slip, you can say, add a little line that says, yes, I have remembered XYZ organization with a gift in my will. Or, no, I haven't, but I'd like to learn more about it. To have them self-identify. We can do a lot of educational programs. We can do, I like to form advisory councils of estate planning attorneys and other people who are experts in this field, so that I would never say, I am not an expert in estate planning, I am not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, but I know some folks who are. And if you don't have a team of experts who can help you, we know some folks who can help you, who can talk with you. Advertise. We did, when I worked for the Hebrew Home of Greater Washington, we did an advertising campaign that was just overall for the whole institution, but we had a coupon at the bottom that said, would you like a free asset inventory guide? People wrote back to us, and we had this publication printed to help you keep track of your assets. And that helped us determine that we had this whole pool of people who were interested in learning about planned giving because we gave them this free booklet. I bought the guts of it from a company that creates these things and had a cover made to look like our family publications. So it wasn't that expensive to do. And it showed us specifically who was interested in this. And of course, donor stories. And being storytelling organizations, that has been hugely successful and important for us, is telling stories about donors and publishing them on our website, in our newsletter, in our various publications, why this person has given, what inspired them to give. And oftentimes people will see themselves in those stories and say, okay, I know Mary. I can do that too. I had no idea she did that. I'd like to join her. So when I'm talking about planned giving, I always like to think like the donor. If the donor wants to do something quick and easy, cash is going to be your best vehicle. Put yourselves in their shoes, figure out what it is that they want to do, what they want to accomplish, and when. Oops, sorry. Where am I? thing like that. Okay. For a bequest, if they'd like to, if their gift, if their I love you but is, I don't know that I can make a gift like that right now, my budget is real tight, well, would you like to think about making a gift long after you're able to write a check? And that could be a bequest. But the science of this, and there's a gentleman by the name of Russell James out of Texas who's done a lot of scientific studies about the language that we use when we talk about planned gifts. He says never call it a bequest, call it a gift in your will, because it's a lot less scary, it's a lot less complicated. So you can have that on your remit slip. Have you considered making a gift in your will to XYZ organization? What's the beauty of a bequest, of a gift in your will, is it doesn't affect you in any way during your lifetime. It can actually help your heirs by whittling down your estate if necessary. And again, as we said, usually folks that have made a bequest, their annual gifts are higher. The risk here, though, is what? Bequests are revocable. So once people have said that they've remembered you in your will, that to me is when the work just starts. That's when you need to continue to keep them involved, to honor them, to recognize them with your legacy society, invite them to events, keep them informed, keep them a part of your family, because it can change like that. Now, I have actually 3 planned gifts of my own. I have changed the beneficiary designation on one of them because the organization no longer suited my needs, and it's easy to do. So, for me, once people have remembered you in their will, that's when the work really begins. That's the opportunity to keep that person invested and involved. Here's another easy way. A large gift at a little cost. An insurance policy. This is one of my planned gifts too. I have a small life insurance policy, and I've named several beneficiaries of it because I was relatively young when I took out the insurance policy, my premium is pretty low. And it's easy for me to budget. So this is a great tool for a younger family who would like to make a gift. You name the charity as the owner and the beneficiary of it. They can actually get a tax deduction for paying the premium. It's a wonderful tool, and again, it does not require a lot of legal expenses. You can just do it on your own. Another really easy thing to do is an IRA beneficiary designation. So if your organization has an IRA, a 401k, you can go to your HR department and say, I'd like 1% of my IRA to go toward XYZ organization. You can do it like that. It's real easy. It doesn't require legal assistance. And it's a way of involving people in your legacy society. And as we talked about before, being top-down and inside-out, if you really want to build your planned giving program, you need to have your leadership involved too. And this is an easy way, a painless way, for them to be involved. So a beneficiary designation, you can advertise that. I got a wonderful piece from the ASPCA with 4 easy ways to make a planned gift. A gift in your will, an insurance policy designation, an IRA beneficiary designation. So easy, and didn't affect me in any way. Another good thing about doing this with IRA beneficiary designation, I just lost my dad a year ago when we were distributing his estate amongst my brother and sister and I. He had a number of IRAs. Now that is taxed multiple times. You're nodding your head, you know this, yeah. But a gift of an IRA to a charity is tax-free. So that is a great way of making a gift to a charity that is not going to hurt the heirs in any way, can actually help the heirs by giving away. It's usually considered the most expensive part of an estate. So if your donor is saying, well, I love your organization, but I want to benefit my heirs, and I want to give them the most possible, you might suggest that have you considered giving away the most expensive piece of your estate with an IRA beneficiary designation? It's a great tool. And these are all wonderful things that can be done easily, again, that don't affect your donor in any way during their daily life or their regular budgeting process, anything like that, but it can help solidify their commitment to your organization and open up a whole new revenue stream for your organization for its future life, future solvency, and future ability to continue the mission. The most important thing, though, on any communication that you have about planned giving, and I have this on every piece that I publish, is always consult a qualified advisor. I always have that caveat on everything that I'm talking about. Because, again, I am not an attorney. I am not an accountant. I would never dream of trying to help anyone plan their estate. So the safest, the most important thing you can do is to say, always consult a qualified advisor when you're planning your estate. But if you have some interest, we'd love to talk with you about it. There are a lot of other vehicles that are more complicated, and you might consider working with a bank or a wealth advisor to help you through them. Your organization may not be in a position at this point to be able to manage those types of estates. I worked with an organization that had a gift annuity program, and we did it all internally. We managed some pretty big trusts, but it was a 100-year-old organization that had a really well-developed development department, and they could do that. But if you're just starting out, think of these easy tools. Put some language on your website that says, here's how you can make a planned gift, how you can make a gift in your will. Here's how you can designate a percentage of your estate, or a piece of property, or something like that. And it's easy enough to do, just to plant the seed and get the information out so that people know that this is part of your program and they can support you now and in the future. So now I'll turn this over to Teresa for our closing, so she can tell you a little bit more about the statistics that are highlighted on the back of the Giving USA report.
So the bottom line is this fundraising plan, as you can see, for the Giving USA goes in 70% of our giving, the $410 billion came from individuals. So that's really where we focus most of our strategic plan, is how do we get our individuals involved. And you can see the other totals there, but $410 billion came to nonprofit organizations just last year. So development is live and well. Here's some other statistics. Shows you sort of where you are. Religion was the #1 category where it received contributions. But there are a lot of societies and causes out there.
So we invite you to take a look at givingusa.com. You can download the report for free. All that information is there, but that can help inform some of the decisions that you're making or some of the causes that you are promoting. So let's say within your organization you have a whole arts aspect of what you do. That can help inform your messaging. If there's an educational component to your organization, focus on that, and you can see how groups of people might follow your lead. So that's it for our presentation today. We are just about at 2:56.
Any questions? Did I turn this off? I think I already did. Yeah. Any questions? Anything you want us to?
Just remember that fundraising is, pardon me, givingusa.com.
Givingusa.com.
Yep. I think it's .com, either .com or .org. But just Google Giving USA, and they will you can download their reports for free. There's some more information there. I just did 2 pages of the report. But remember, Hank Rosso says, fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. So I congratulate you for learning how to teach that joy, and thank you for joining us in this endeavor. And if you'd want to reach us for more information, we're always available to answer questions here and later. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, and have a great conference.